Going to call this meeting of the August 22nd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting to order. I am Lisa Ellsworth, the Chair of the Planning Commission. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Lasson.
Here.
Vice Chair Hernandez Mejia.
Here.
Commissioner Bartel.
Here.
Commissioner Berlin.
Here.
Commissioner Bravo is not here. Commissioner Corning.
Here.
Chair Ellsworth.
Oh, here. All right. Would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I see that we have the minutes in our packet. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
I did, and I have something.
Are there some corrections or additions or changes?
We're sharing microphones here. So in the introduction, it mentions Chair Ellsworth as far as the Pledge of Allegiance, and it does also mention your absence. So just making that correction.
Please correct that I was not leading the Pledge of Allegiance. I was in fact absent. Thank you. Are there any additional additions or corrections? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections that were presented.
I move the minutes be adopted as corrected.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Do we have any business from the public? Does anyone in the audience have anything that they would like to address the commission on that is not in the agenda later on this evening? So is there anything other than the items on the agenda? Seeing none in the audience, I don't see any in online, so do we have any communications from staff?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Well, tonight we have a public hearing. We have a quasi judicial public hearing scheduled this evening, and the purpose of this hearing is to ensure that all interested parties can offer relevant evidence to the commission in a timely and orderly manner. Because this is a quasi judicial hearing, commissioners should maintain an open mind and not make any decisions until after the hearing is closed and all of the evidence is presented at the hearing and has been considered. Okay, so with that, I am going to open the public hearing on the consolidated application CU 24-02, DR 24-02, PP 24-01, and SA 24-01 for a gas station with the convenience store of 4,110 square feet, known as US Market, plus the attached commercial office area of 1,863 square feet, and as phase 2, a southwest office building of 5,000 square feet, all in the commercial CG zoning district. So with that, do we have any ex parte contact with the applicant or any other individuals? Do any of the commissioners on the phone have anything to declare?
No.
Nope. Have we had any site visits?
Driving by.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, just driving by.
I
And
drive
is there
by
any,
on my way to and from work.
okay. Are there any conflicts of interest that would preclude you from making a fair and impartial decision? Seeing none?
No.
Okay. Are there any challenges to any of the disclosures or to any of the commissioners or omissions by the commission? Okay. Hearing none. Staff, do we have a staff report? Oh,
Okay.
excuse me. Can we have you please read the hearing statement first?
Chair.
Both Oregon law and the Woodburn Development Ordinance govern evidentiary, quasi-judicial, and land use hearings and require that at the commencement of the hearing, a statement be read to all persons in attendance. The applicable substantive criteria for this land use decision are listed in the staff report and are as follows. Transportation System Plan, figures 1, 4, and 7, and Woodburn Development Ordinance, WDO 1.02, 1.04, 2.01.05, 2.03, 2.06, 3.01 through 3.07, 3.11, 4.01, 4.02, 5.03.01, 5.03.02, 5.03.03, and 5.03.05. The hearing will proceed in the following general order: staff report, applicant's presentations, testimony in favor of the application, testimony in opposition to the application, rebuttal, closure of the record, and deliberation and decision. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria just stated or other criteria in a plan or land use regulation which the person believes apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise a constitutional or other issue relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party wanting a continuance or to keep the record open must make that request while the record is still open.
Thank you. Now, do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. Give me just a moment and I will share it with our viewers at home. Good evening, all. My name is Colin Cortez. I'm Senior Planner with the City of Woodburn, and I'll be giving a presentation with a slide presentation for about 5 to 10 minutes, after which the applicant will introduce himself. The slide presentation is an overview of the written document that is the staff report that the Planning Commission had to see over the past week. The basic issue before the Planning Commission tonight is a number of land use applications that constitute the overall proposal to develop a gas station on the subject property. And the magnitude of the development is such that the Planning Commission gets to make a decision on the proposal. The staff report and the conditions of approval in it are recommendations by city staff for the Planning Commission to take into consideration as it makes this decision. So far, we've received quite a bit of testimony, written testimony, which has been posted online and brought to the attention of the Commission earlier today. And the Commission also has print copies of the testimony with them on the dais tonight. We had at least, I believe, 8 pieces of testimony, one of which was a petition. And I think, needless to say, most of the testimony was in opposition to the proposal. The subject property is composed of 2 lots. It's been empty since 2021, following demolition of 2 vacant buildings that used to be banks. What's proposed is a convenience store, more than 4,000 square feet. The gas station itself, 6 pump islands with 12 pumps and a canopy. There's also a commercial office area proposed with the development. So the convenience store would have a tenant space attached to it on the south side. And I'll show a site plan image a little farther on. And there's also a standalone commercial office building proposed at the southwest corner of the site. Proposes phase 2, meaning that the developer might choose to build the gas station first and to build the southwest office building at a later time. And the reason the proposal is before the Planning Commission tonight is because in the commercial zoning, usually a gas station is allowed to be developed by right, but because this site is within 200 feet of property that is zoned for residential development, it's what's called a conditional use, meaning it's conditional upon city approval, leading to tonight's hearing. So more about where is the site. So this is an overall image of the city, showing approximately roads and lots. The light green is parks for orientation. City Hall is the reddish dot in the center. And in relation to all this is the site, which is colored in green, the corner of Oregon Way and Highway 214, or Newberg Highway, and the general vicinity circled in green. This is an older satellite view of the property before the banks were demolished. You can see Woodburn Golf and Estates, the golf course nearby. You can see Kentucky Fried Chicken across the highway to the north, and immediately to the west is Dairy Queen. To the southwest is the Panner condominiums, and there are several houses to the east and southeast. This is a close-up. On the left is an excerpt of the zoning map showing the commercial zoning of the property, as well as zoning in the vicinity. The yellowish color is residential, the reddish color is commercial. And on the right, you see a close-up of the site as it is today following demolition. And this is a slightly larger image of that close-up showing the site today. Following the demolition, there's nothing left to speak of. There's no remaining buildings or trees, just the remains of surface parking and driveways. On the ground, this is a view going east on Highway 214 coming up on the property. There's the remnant driveway and not much else on the property. At Oregon Way looking south, this is the frontage along Oregon Way today. Not much to see other than, for example, the speed limit sign and the two signs posted for truck traffic on Oregon Way. This is on Oregon Way looking north back to Highway 214. On the left, you can see part of a driveway for a house, and then just beyond it in asphalt, the leftover driveway from the banks, the one driveway in Oregon Way. Some more images from closer to the rear of the property. This is an image courtesy of Google Street View from a few years ago, showing the parking when it was still in use and the Panner condominium building beyond the fence, which is on the Panner property. And this is the condition of the subject property today. The fence and the building of the condominiums remains in place. As far as what's actually proposed for development, this is a colored two-dimensional straight down view of the site plan. So to do some tour guiding, so to speak, the structures are indicated in the beige color. I'll start at the top right, the northeast. That's the convenience store. Just south of it, attached to it, is a commercial office tenant space. Over here to the west, the northwest part of the site is where the fuel pump canopy would be. And down here at the southwest corner of the property would be that standalone office building. And the green is hinting at the fact that the perimeter of the property, as well as some areas within it, would have landscaping that you might normally expect, some grass, shrubbery, and trees. And the rest of the site is given over to vehicular pavement and walkways. This is a sheet from the developer's drawings showing the elevations of the two buildings. There are some color renderings towards the left, and there are also some flattened black and white views of each side of the buildings. Pretty much the convenience store looks like what one would expect from a convenience store. And the office building could have anywhere from 4 to 5 tenant spaces. And the central area of that building in the image, the top portion, the lobby area, the highest point would be 20 feet. This is a close-up of the developer's artist rendering the convenience store. And then a close-up of that image of what the office building would probably look like. This being the front or the north side of it. Now I'll talk a little bit about process. So when a developer applies for something and it needs a commission decision, the role of staff is to draft a report that looks at various city rules and regulations and determines whether or not something that is proposed meets the rules enough that it can be approved. The document's called the analyses and findings, and it was attached to the report. And in many cases where something needs generally some sort of fixing or improvement, there's what's called a condition of approval recommended, so that the project can be approved, but somehow be enhanced from what it was originally proposed by the developer. As I mentioned, the proximity to residential zoning is why the proposal is before the commission tonight. And with the recommended conditions of approval that were given to the commission in the staff report, it's staff belief that the proposal can be approved by the commission. And so staff's recommending approval with these specific conditions. The next 3 slides will be a summary of what's in the staff report, of basically what the conditions accomplish. So they try and make sure that along the public facing part of the development, along the street and the highway, that the look and feel is welcoming for people driving and also walking and cycling on the adjacent sidewalks. That the look and feel of the landscaping and the yards along the highway and the street are lush and welcoming. That the proposed buildings not have long blank walls facing streets, that they have an obvious way to get to the main entrance, that their entrances provide shelter from rain, and generally look good from the street. There was also consideration about having specific connections for people to walk and cycle between main entrances to buildings and to sidewalks, providing for an additional trash receptacle for people who do go to the convenience store on foot or by bicycle to cut down on potential littering, to have limitations on any excessive exterior lighting on the development, to make sure the buildings look good, to make sure that not only is there a buffer or screen wall along the residential properties, but also that the wall looks good. And then regarding the overhead power lines along the highway, if the applicant is not to bury them, that the applicant would pay the city money in lieu of actually burying the lines and removing the poles. There'll also be a few evergreen trees among the trees planted on the site. There would be street trees where they can fit, particularly in Oregon Way. And that although the developer is not upgrading the highway frontage so that there would be a planted strip of street trees, the conditions would have the developer pay the city money to plant trees somewhere else in the city. And the developer would still be required to upgrade Oregon Way so that the very skimpy sidewalk gets demolished. There'd be a planter strip installed with grass and street trees and a new wider sidewalk installed. And then lastly, there are conditions that address the operations of the gas station. I mentioned lighting. There's also a condition that limits the hours of operation of the convenience store so that the store cannot be open past midnight, Monday through Saturday, and can't open earlier than 6 a.m. And they would have to close by 11 p.m. on Sunday. Oh, and I was previewing this last slide, which is a 1-slide summary of it all, so that there'll be a buffer and screen wall. There'll be lots of shrubs and trees around the perimeter of the property. There's going to be a trash receptacle for people patronizing the convenience store on foot or by bicycle, limits on exterior lighting, not having any vacuum or tire pumps too close to the residential properties to the south, limiting the hours of the convenience store, and then on-site signage that very clearly directs drivers on the site onto how to return to the highway. In other words, encouraging them to turn left on Oregon Way to go back to the highway as opposed to turning right. There's a phasing plan. As I mentioned earlier, the office building might develop later depending on market conditions. And the conditions acknowledge this and do task the landowner with maintaining that area of property in good condition until such time that the office building does develop. Regarding the frontages, the developer applied for something called the street adjustment. The purpose of this type of application is that for developers who don't go by the book, so to speak, in upgrading frontages, the typical requirement is where there's a curb-tight sidewalk to demolish, put in a planter strip with street trees, and build new wider sidewalk, is to negotiate what the developer might do instead. This was primarily used for the highway frontage. The developer was inclined to keep that frontage as it is. What's out there today is an 8-foot wide curb-tight sidewalk, as it is for most of the properties in the vicinity of the subject property. So based on what the developer proposed and the case the developer made, the criteria for street adjustment, and the conditions that secure a lot of improvement along Oregon Way. Staff is recommending approval, more or less premised on the exchange of keeping the highway frontage as it is, but making the Oregon Way frontage the most appealing frontage visually and functionally for not only people driving, but people walking and cycling.
Make sure my camera's off.
I'll use some images to describe that. Staff used a tool to create a cross-section view of roads. So this is a cross-section approximating what the highway is like, the turn lane, the travel lanes, the bicycle lanes, and the sidewalk. If you were looking at this and pretending where the gas station would be, it would be on the left side of the image. And what the developer is proposing and what's proposed by staff as conditions is to keep the highway frontage as it is. So it would be that 8-foot wide curb-tight sidewalk along the highway. Along Oregon Way, this is an image of what's out there today. This is looking north. So there's the north and south lanes and a turn lane as you approach Highway 214 and curb-tight sidewalks on each side. Regarding Oregon Way, based on the classification of this type of street, it's not a major thoroughfare, but it's somewhere between a local street and a major thoroughfare. The plan is for streets like this to have planter strips of street trees and slightly wider sidewalks. Compared to this, this is what the conditions are requiring. So it wouldn't be exactly by the book, but it would be an improvement over what's out there today. So the westerly side, the left-hand side on the drawing, would have the demolition of that curb-tight sidewalk, installation of a planter strip of grass and street trees, and new wider sidewalk. And this is a side-by-side graphic view of how Oregon Way would be improved on the west side along the gas station. As far as the architectural wall, the basic requirements that where the property line follows two adjacent houses, the minimum height would be 6 feet. And then where it follows the property of the condominiums, the minimum height would be 9 feet.
Just the
And
one.
there is allowance for the developer to have some cedar wood segments of the wall. Let me pause a moment and ask for our viewers at home to make sure that all your microphones are muted. Thank you. The wall can have some cedar wood segments to it, like the built example at the bottom right on the screen, but the majority of the wall still has to be masonry, which means brick or concrete block. And then coming towards the end, one of the other conditions to really drive home the message for drivers of large trucks, semi-trucks, fuel trucks, that when exiting the site on Oregon Way, they will most definitely be turning left. And to accomplish this, not only will there be signage on the site, but the idea from our Public Works Department is that the developer will put in a very narrow, slightly raised median with poles that would allow normal passenger vehicles to turn right or left, but would definitely have truckers continue to turn left. In the image is an example elsewhere in the city. It's an example on North Settlemyre approaching 214, passing Church Street. The purpose is that drivers in that left turn lane are going to turn left on the highway, but they can't turn left onto Church Street, and those onto Church Street can't turn left onto Settlemyre.
Before you move, can I
Yes.
ask a question about the street that the median is? Is that a Woodburn City street or is that an ODOT street, maintained street?
My understanding is, even though it is close to the highway, that portion of Oregon Way is city jurisdiction.
Okay.
I'll cover some conditions about transportation, particularly traffic. This is a quote from the staff report. The thrust of the conditions are to collect money from the developer.
Can I
To-
also, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes, Chair.
Can we make sure the record reflects that Commissioner Bravo has arrived? Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Commissioner Bravo. The purpose is to collect money to examine how to reduce the crash rate that occurs at nearby intersections. The money would be fund studies by the city in concert with ODOT to see what could be done about that. One of the reasons for this is The highway, of course, is a state road, so the city doesn't control it. The state highway department does have general standards for how much traffic an intersection can support. Based on what the development would do in terms of trip generation, there would not be enough trips to require any sort of physical change to the intersection of Oregon Way and the highway. And so there's no basis for trying to collect money to make a change physically to the intersection. But the developer's traffic study did identify crash rates as a concern. And so it was justified for the city to condition the developer giving us monies for the two entities, the city and ODOT, to address the problem. And those fees are specified somewhere else in the staff report. There's also a fee for transit. There's a bus stop right across the road. We might have conditioned that there be a bus shelter installed. Right now, it's just a sign on the ground, but there's no room between the sidewalk and the adjacent houses. So the city is conditioning collecting money enough that would go towards a transit shelter somewhere in the city system, along with bicycle parking for a bus shelter. So to sum up, basically regarding staff operations, staff is recommending conditions of approval specifically to mitigate unpleasant aspects of neighboring and patronizing a gas station. We're also getting monies from the developer to study how to reduce vehicular crashes at intersections near the site. We are also getting the developer to upgrade Oregon Way frontage and also give the city money in exchange for not upgrading the frontage along the highway. And that about summarizes the proposal. And if the commission has any immediate clarifying questions for staff, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
I just had one question. So Oregon Way is significantly wider. Where does that come from? The extra, people's yards get chopped off and there's a new sidewalk and new.
I think I understand what you're talking about. So as the road approaches Highway 214, it grows a little wider because the turn lane comes into existence for people turning left. There'll be no change on the east side next to those houses. But on the developer side, the developer has to dedicate additional right-of-way to the city, which will give extra room to add the planter strip and the new sidewalk.
So it just starts after the single-family homes. It's just starts where the property is.
Yeah, there's a taper, so the double yellow line starts moving, and then there's extra pavement that opens up with left turn arrows.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, I use that street practically every day. And turning right off 214, it's one lane. I understand the east side of the street has two lanes. One goes straight, one goes left. But you can also make a right turn too.
Yeah, there's one through lane you could call it, where when you're at the intersection as a driver, you could either go straight or turn right onto 214.
And then it continues into one lane all the way down to Hayes.
Yeah, I'll emphasize that the roadway itself isn't going to be narrowed in any capacity. There'll still be two through lanes and a left turn lane.
Yeah, it needs to be widened. Yes.
I guess the simple description is the city's plan for that class of street doesn't require more than two through lanes, one in each direction.
Really?
Yes.
With a gas station there and an office building there and a convenience store there.
Yes.
My question is actually going back to that office space that is part of phase 2 and what constitutes a good condition for them maintaining that, because I can also see that if, you know, conditions aren't necessarily right and it can take years to build that. So my curiosity on what would that look like in the meantime.
So looking over the condition regarding that phasing plan, let's see. One of the things the developer would have to do is to lay down a curb on the property. So to prevent essentially visitors, employees on the property for the uses that are developed from using the leftover area as additional parking. So a curb would prevent that. And then there's reference to a general city ordinance, the nuisance ordinance. It's the kind of ordinance that you would expect that requires people to keep up their properties generally. And it's referenced, and it calls attention to the developer to make sure that the undeveloped area does not become a place for any junk vehicles, no open storage of junk, no scattering of rubbish, and draws attention to the sections of that general ordinance. Well, like most general ordinances, it would be the code enforcement arm at the police department upon complaint.
Sometimes they're not as vigilant as they need to be.
Can you explain the red triangle kind of on the right corner there?
The draftsperson for the site plan was attempting to indicate the vision clearance area, or a site triangle as people might call it.
Okay.
So it's the
So
area that to not put overly tall structures in.
Okay, it's not that that piece will be white, the road will be right in there, it's just, okay.
Yeah.
And the other question, I didn't see a lot of information on the traffic plan. Where is traffic going to come in, enter the property and exit the property? And at one point, there was some questions about whether or not you could go from one property to the other with ODOT. So if you're coming down 214, can you turn directly into the site? And then will you exit on Oregon Way, or are there's going to be an entrance and an exit onto 214? Can you talk a little bit about the traffic pattern, how people will enter and egress?
Oh yeah, I can promise that. So 2 years earlier, I should back up even more. So because the highway is a state highway, the State Department of Transportation has say not only over the highway itself, but the kind and number of driveways along it. And 2 years ago, the applicant was in a difficult position regarding the driveway access, and it had two potential site plans. And back then, the commission had looked with disfavor upon there being two potential options for site plans. The developer has since gotten a conditional kind of approval from the DOT regarding the driveway. What the DOT is looking for specifically is one driveway along the highway at most, and specifically that it can be one way inbound to the site only, no exiting traffic. So the highway, the driveway along the highway illustrated here, top left, the northwest, is because ODOT has said it shall be one way in only, period. And then naturally it will lead to the question of where do people exit? So when drivers are done, they will come down here to this drive aisle at the southeast to the one driveway at Oregon Way, would turn left. And the assumption being that most traffic would come to and from I-5, they would queue up in the left turn lane to turn left onto 214.
And would the driveway on Oregon Way be in and out?
It would be two-way.
Okay.
Oh, I should mention that after the applicant introduces himself, there'll be a time where the chair indicates that public comment is open and that people can be coming up to the microphone.
Do any of the commissioners online have questions for Colin, for staff?
I do not.
Commissioner Bravo, do you have any questions?
I do have a clarifying one. In the image you showed that Oregon Way has two lanes and that middle one that kind of goes off for turning. But then when you were, I believe, answering my colleague, you mentioned that it's one way either way. Are you able to pull up a Google Maps or just to make sure like how it is right now? Because I know I drive by, but I don't necessarily go in and out to really understand that. And if there is a turning lane, where does it start? Is it going to start where that exit of the gas station is?
Here's a satellite view. I think this is getting at what you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
So essentially where the curve is today on the west side, in the actual travelway, there's not going to be any physical change in terms of the number of lanes. So along the frontage, the developer would just be west of the curb, demolishing the sidewalk to put in the landscape strip with the street trees and new sidewalk. There's still going to be a southbound lane, a northbound lane, and a left turn lane.
Okay. From what I can see there's the yellow line is a 2 solid yellow line, correct?
Yes.
Well, you said there's no changes. And ideally, at least what I remember doing with my driver's test, good memory right there, is that technically you're supposed to treat it as if there's, cement barrier there that you're not supposed to cross over. But if what I'm seeing is the exit entrance of the gas station right there being past that 2-lane marker.
I understand what you're saying. So although we're not traffic cops, staff did discuss this, and we learned recently that the developer's not proposing it, but our Public Works Department, which can make changes to streets generally, has contemplated in front of the driveway, altering the double yellow stripes to indicate that people legally can turn left if they're going north on Oregon Way to get into the gas station, if they were coming from the south.
Thank you.
Colin, so there's a signal there at that corner, right? So then people can turn left out of the gas station, go to the corner, and then when the signal's right, turn left and get back on 214 going
That's right.
west. Because before, I think there was a big thing about people trying to make a U-turn exiting.
Yeah, that's because 2 years ago, the original proposal would have allowed drivers to use the northwest driveway to get back on the highway,
Okay.
which introduced the prospect of weaving across 2 lanes to make a U-turn.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I've got one more question for staff, and it has to do with deliveries, semis, trucks, fuel trucks. If there's only one entrance, will the fuel trucks would then have to exit on Oregon Way? Is
Yes.
that correct? And where would the median be that you had talked about?
That would be left to be determined because the Public Works Department, being civil engineers, would work out the very technical drawings with the developer. But my understanding generally is it would be a little distance south of where the south property line is. So somewhere kind of in front of 953 and 952 Oregon Way.
So the plan would be to make it unfavorable for a truck to exit and turn right. They would only be able to exit and turn left
Yeah.
and go.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the usual vehicles like passenger cars or small trucks like a FedEx vehicle would be able to turn right or left. But a large truck, like a fuel truck, for example, would be large enough that if attempted to make a right turn in a swooping maneuver, the median and the floppy poles would indicate to the drivers that they ought not to do that.
Okay.
And so they would turn left.
So is somebody going to consider what happens to getting out of the driveway at 953 and 952?
Our Public Works Department is aware of that and they will work on a solution, we're told.
All right. Do we have any more questions for staff? If not, I will invite the applicant up.
Do we know how often the larger trucks would make a left turn there?
I hear you.
Please answer.
Do we know how often?
It may have been mentioned, but the applicant will know for sure, so I'll let him answer that question.
Okay. Okay, so the next part of the hearing, I am going to ask the applicant to come up. The applicant will come up and give testimony, answer questions that the commission has. After the applicant has finished with their testimony, I will then ask for members of the audience. I will actually use the green sheets here to individually ask members of the audience to come up and speak. And after the audience has had a chance to speak, that normally what happens next is the applicant gets to do what they call a rebuttal. So I know that a lot of you are antsy to have your chance to speak, and that is coming up. But at this time, I am going to invite the applicant or the applicant's counsel to come up and speak. And when you come up to speak, please speak into the microphone. The microphone should be on. Give us your name and your address, and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Mark Shipman. I'm a land use attorney in Salem, 250 Church Street, Suite 200, Salem, Oregon 97302. I work for Sawfield Griggs. We're here representing the applicant and the property owner in this case. And to my right is Joe Bessman. Joe is our traffic engineer, which is a key part of this conditional use request. And so I've asked Joe to come up and so he can present as well. Also with us this evening is one of the property owners, Don Sadhu, also our architect. Don's word to the left, your right. Architect Ron Pett is sitting with him. Thank you for this opportunity. This morning, we got the Tonkin Torp letter, which I think all of you have seen. It's in your packets. I'm not going to go into and address each one of the issues that Mr. Peterson has raised in his letter. But what I do want to do is I do want to go through a couple of the points and then have Joe talk about traffic for you as well. We are at the end of our rebuttal. We're going to ask that the record be kept open for a period of time and for a bit longer period of time, because this is an extremely important application to our client. This application has not this specific application, but another request for a convenience store, gas station, and office building was denied by the city a couple years ago. And so this one looks like it's going to be on a similar track. And we want to be careful as we go forward with respect to not only the evidence we provide, but also with respect to the findings that we're making and with respect to the conditions of approval that we put on this applicant, on this application. Essentially, our presentation is pretty brief. I really wanted to focus on the letter from Mr. Peterson and Tonkin Torp. Our application request is staff went through and did a great job. We appreciate the thoroughness that staff did. The staff report and the conditions of approval are very different than what you saw in the last application, the last go round. But in Mr. Peterson's letter, he has a couple of areas that he covers. One, I'm going to characterize as general comments and general objections, and another one is traffic. Okay, I'm going to stick to the general. I'll let the traffic engineer focus on his expertise. But under the general comments, one of the first things that is identified in letters that this is no different than the other application. And I don't agree. This application is very different than the other application. And Colin did a great job as far as going through, and he identified for you in his PowerPoint presentation what I call the 13 different elements in the staff report on page 4 that are different with this application than with the other application. And I think that's a significant factor. Not only that, but I think staff's done a much better job this round with respect to identifying the findings and analyzing those findings of the criteria, the approval criteria, and then taking a look to see whether or not the applicant has satisfied them. And if they've satisfied them, whether or not an appropriate condition of approval needs to be layered on top of that. And staff has done that as well. They've done, like I said, did a very thorough job. So is this the same application? It's not. Yeah, it's a C-store, it's a gas station, it's with the office project looking at phase 2. But this is a very different application. The applicant went through, and their architect went through great pains to work with staff to come up with different design features, different landscape features, different requirements as far as hours of operation, access, that make this different than what was before you before. The other area that the Tonkin Torp letter addresses is they also address issues related to inadequate findings. And really, they talk about inadequate findings, deferring determinations of compliance, and really identifying how those deferments of the compliance, how they're feasible with the imposition of conditions of approval. And that's kind of the next major part of their objection letter. And really, I kind of see this as a bit of a red herring, because this is not a fatal flaw. This is not a fatal issue. It is something that is relevant. It's something that we will address and take up later when we submit our response letter to theirs, and be able to rebut how and why not only the findings, but also the analysis that staff did, and how those tie in with the conditions of approval. And is this something that is, like I said, it's not fatal. It's something that we can address. And if we feel that we need to improve or strengthen conditions of approval, we will recommend to you that we do that. Finally, the letter addresses that we've not met our burden of proof, and I just think that's wrong. I think, again, I go back to the staff report, very thorough, very well done. And in the letter, Mr. Peterson kind of nitpicks on a couple of items with respect to the criteria that he doesn't feel like we've provided sufficient evidence, and the burden of proof in a land use case is always on the applicant. That's us. And I agree with the fact that the burden of proof's on us, but I don't agree with respect to his characterization that we don't satisfy those criteria. I believe we do. But again, if we find that we're short or we're shy of a particular criteria, then we'll supplement that with supporting evidence and with analysis and findings. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Joe to talk about traffic, which I think is really one of the key issues in this case.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Joe Besman, Transite Consulting, 61271 Splendor Lane, Bend, Oregon. It's a pleasure to be here in person tonight, so thank you. Make sure this microphone can pick me up okay. One of the things I want to start with is really what are the criteria for a traffic study, and what everyone seems to agree on. The city's reviewing consultant, ODOT, even the opposition engineer, is that everything we've done is consistent, it's reasonable, and the offsite impacts, the plan we have complies with the city's development code requirements. So that's first and foremost. In the Peterson letter, there's some concerns about circulation and some minor stuff that I'll talk about. But what I want to hit on first is really what's changed in this application. So going back a couple years, as you guys seem to recall, we have two different parcels. The parcel to the west was granted right in and right out access to the highway. The parcel to the east was only given access to Oregon Way, with no ability to even cross over the other parcel and have right in or right access to the highway. Our plan was to try and limit the impacts to Oregon Way. So we wanted to have the right in, right out serve both parcels, so we'd be able to lessen the traffic on Oregon Way. However, in this area, we're balancing the safety and operations of these traffic signals. And what the crashes are showing us is there's a lot more crashes having to do with U-turns. What we didn't want is people leaving the driveway, weaving across the left turn lane, trying to make a U-turn and get back to I-5. So we've revised our plan so that now we only have a right-in connection from Oregon 214 in the eastbound direction, and there's a median that prevents people from making left turns out of there. Now, what that does is it really helps to address the highway safety. Motorists now can make a much safer movement using the traffic signal to get back onto the much busier Highway 214 system. So that's really what we've done. ODOT's reviewed that. They've now approved our permit. They said that they agree, and they think that's really in the best interest for this site to operate in that manner. So we do have consensus on that point. One of the comments from the opposition is that the driveway we've shown doesn't restrict the driveway to right-ins only well enough. And I agree with them. I don't think it does yet. And I think what we need is an additional condition to really look at that channelization. If you look at the way Lawson is designed today, you kind of have that right turn that forces you in and doesn't let you, wouldn't let you turn out if you only had that one half of the pork chop island. If you look at the new Costco on Kubler Boulevard, in fact, as well, you've got that right in design. And I think that would benefit this driveway. But most importantly, The driveway on a 214 is under ODOT's jurisdiction, and they're going to be responsible for reviewing the design of the driveway and ensuring that it complies with their requirements. So what I would request is that during this open record period, we work with staff to condition this site to work with ODOT and provide a design that can make sure that the driveway doesn't also cater to right turns out. Looking at the other comments, there was a lot of concerns about the trucks getting into this site and congesting things, and there's even some truck diagrams. And what I can tell you is I could drive a truck much better than those CAD operators could. What we've got in this site is actually a very well designed and very generous site. We've got 36-foot wide drive aisles. When you think of a truck is about 8 feet wide. There's plenty of room for both queuing and for those trucks to circulate. We have a dedicated space for those fueling trucks to sit and to load. And if for some reason though that wasn't enough, we could even cone off the southernmost fuel dispensers. We have a drive aisle next to the office. Bottom line is we have a lot of circulation options here to make this work. I've worked on a number of fuel stations across the Northwest, and looking at these comments, I don't think these are any kinds of fatal flaws, and we'll address these more formally in the written record.
Okay. Can you hold it? Colin, would you put up the site plan for us so that as the applicant is speaking, we can actually see what he's talking about?
I'm on it.
I'm sorry, I should have brought that with me.
No, that's fine. Some of us are visual and it helps being able to see. I actually want the one where it shows the office building, the convenient, that one. Thank you.
Yeah, if you look on the west side of those fuel dispensers, that's a 36-foot wide drive aisle coming in from 214. So that if there's any queues, they're not going to block inbound vehicles and force those to queue up onto the highway. And I think that's most of my comments. Like I said, I'll provide more formal responses to the Peterson letter, but really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Aren't most people concerned not really so much about how the truck drives around on the property, but what it happens when it leaves that driveway and goes on Oregon Way and
yeah, when
that works?
Yeah, there was a comment about that too, and the comment was if the queue in that northbound direction on Oregon Way is long, can that truck get out? And what happens at every traffic signal everywhere is, and especially with truck drivers who are better than most of us at driving, they wait for the light to turn green and the queue's clear, especially at Oregon Way because it's operating within its carrying capacity. It's not spilling over cycle to cycle. It's working, and that's what the numbers are showing us. So when that light turns green, that queue dissipates and that truck can easily get out. And I stood out there and watched that. So I can attest to that as well.
Yeah.
Stood out there and just watched what the queue was and the operations.
But there were no trucks going.
There was no truck leaving our site at the time, correct? Correct.
Do any of the commissioners online have questions for the applicant?
Not at this time, thank you.
Commissioners here? Okay, well, does the applicant have any more testimony at this time?
Not at this time. We'll reserve that for rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to start asking people to come forward and speak. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of this application? Let me see if I've got anyone. Okay. Would you come forward and give us your name and address?
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, now might be a good time to remind folks about the timer that we have on people, and it's that will run here and it'll give a chirp. And again, it's I don't want people to think that they need to like race away as soon as it happens, but right. It's just something to keep on track.
What we're trying to say is at this point, or the way it works is the applicant has the ability to give us as much testimony as they want. That's the way it works. Going forward, because there are so many people that want to speak, we will limit it to a 3-minute time. If you want to say, if you want to speak, you are welcome to come up and speak, and you've got 3 minutes. We have a timer that will let you know when it's getting close to time. If all you want to come up and say is, I agree with what's already been said, you are welcome to do that. You don't, if somebody says, I hate it, you don't need to walk up and say, I hate it. You can walk up and say, I agree with the last one. If you say you love it, you can come up and say you love it. So what the next part of it is, everyone will get the same amount of time to speak so that everyone gets a chance. Okay? Thank you. And yeah, so if you would start, sir, by giving us your name and your address.
My name is Norm Mabee, Mabee. I live at Nor Condos and 950 Evergreen Road, apartment 219, 97071. I'm in favor of 100% of this proposal. I think if you turn it down, we're back to square one. It takes the property off the tax rolls. It creates we're going back to maybe a 3-story building, and that definitely is going to impact my view, because I see the back end of this property on a daily basis, and I've got a wonderful view now. Donnie's proposal is not going to impact that at all. And I think we need a competitive price on gas during that, around that area. That's about all I got to say. I hope Donnie gets back to the gym.
Well, thank you. All right. So
Turn it in green form, but I'm ready. I would like to say something. But
are you in favor?
yes.
Okay, would you please step forward and give us your name and address, please?
Thank you, guys. My name's Brian Galbraith, Bryan Galbraith at 590 Troon Avenue, Woodburn, Oregon. I'm in favor of it. I think it would be great, kind of piggyback on what he said, as far as the properties have been sitting vacant for a very, very long time. And I just think it would bring great competition for the other stores. And as far as the access in and out to this station, for me, it would be a heck of a lot easier than the one closer to the freeway, which is always such a zoo with McDonald's and everything going this way. And it's all the traffic wise, I think it would be much easier. And as a former truck driver, my entire career, I drove a semi for a living. Truck drivers they don't want to be in that situation driving through there any more than they have to. They're going to be in there maybe once a week, maybe twice. It'll be early in the morning, almost guarantee you, because the busy times of the day to deliver a load of truck fuel with a big truck you don't do it in the middle of the day. And they will be in, they will be out, and they are the safest people on the road. Trust me, because I've done it for a living. So they are very considerate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any others in favor? Would you step forward and give us your name and address?
Carla Galbraith, married to Brian, and we live at 590 Troon Avenue. I'm in favor of the proposed gas station. Right now, that site has just been a real negative influence in this community, if we remember what happened there with the banks. So we could put something in there that generates income and brings joy more to the community. I really think that would. And right now, in order to get a good price for gas, we have to drive to Safeway. And if you've been to Safeway for gas, since they built all those apartments, there's only one way in and one way out, and it's a nightmare. And so when I look at the traffic structure that they're designing here, it looks a lot more favorable to us and for the community and for the safety. Anyhow, I approve.
Thank you. I think I saw another hand that was in favor. Please come up and give us your name and address. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name's Alma Shevchenko, Shevchenko. I live in 489 Turnberry Avenue in Woodburn, Oregon. And I am definitely in favor because same thing what Carla said is it's a bum attracting space that we obviously don't want, you know, to have Woodburn become that way. And of course, it's going to create more jobs, you know, for our community. And I've seen a lot of U.S. markets across the state and other states. And they do an amazing job with cleanliness, their building sketches, their landscaping and all that stuff. And I'm 100% in favor.
Thank you. Do we have any others in favor? Okay. With that, is there one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Rick Haskell. I live in the community here in the Tukwila neighborhood. And I also own a business here in Woodburn, Burn Fitness, the gym up by Dollar Tree. A couple of comments. Number one, I'm absolutely in support of having a business like U.S. Market in that location as opposed to it sitting as a vacant lot. Number two, I agree with everyone about there needing to be some competition with regard to the petroleum, gas station market in that area. Further, and probably most importantly, I'd like to point out for those who don't know it, that the developer in this case is a member of our community who has lived here for many, many years, raised his family here, still lives here, and is interested in improving this community as much as the rest of us are. So you're not going to find anyone else who is more willing to do whatever needs to be done to satisfy the concerns of all neighbors to make this work for everyone. It's not some big company out of New York just coming in here to make money and leech off of all of us. They're trying to improve the community, and that's what we all want. So I hope we can figure out a way to make this work. I understand there's some people that have concerns, and they're legitimate concerns, but you won't find anybody better than Don Sadoo to help address those concerns.
Madam Chair, we need the mailing address, please. Oh, I was going to say we needed his mailing address. I don't think he stated it.
Favor.
In favor. Okay.
My name is Todd Mitchell. I lived here in Woodburn at 377 Ironwood Terrace for 26 years. Don has been a member of our community for 20 of those years, has gone out of his way. He's a family-oriented man, raises money for charity, very community organized. That site has been an eyesore for many years. It's just sitting there vacant. And like my colleague over here, Brian, it's a nightmare trying to get into that McDonald's, the Chevron, and the Arco station over there, which is kind of shady, really. It's dark and it's not well lit. I've been to several of Don's U.S. Market gas stations across the state. They're all very clean, well lit, well managed, and I as well think it would be a added benefit to our community. That's all. Thank you.
In favor.
Okay.
My name is Amar Sadoo. I work for Don Sadoo as well, and also family member.
Can we get your
And 7501 35th Avenue, Northeast Salem, Oregon. I'm not a member of the community, but an extension of my uncle. So we treat this just like our community. My uncle Don Sadoo came into America and has done a very amazing job raising his family, raising my family, and nothing but America's been great to us. With that being said, they've had the opportunity to do such gas stations, opportunities to develop, and they've took the advantage, and they've done an amazing job with all the sites, and recommend you guys to go to check out a couple of them. With that being said, this site sitting there empty isn't doing us any justice in this community. We drive by it, we see it, homeless shelters can go up, a lot of damage can happen. And also a lot of, when you own a property, you don't really want to see homeless people on it. And also with the community that lives above there in the apartments, looking down into that view, I think it's better to see a gas station than seeing a homeless camp out there, right? Respectfully, ARCO AM PM, we know the price situation there. It's more of an issue than a flaw to our community here. And, Uncle Don done a phenomenal job in the golf community, playing with his fellow golfers that are here today, and bringing back community and raising money in Woodburn at OGA Golf Course every year. We just had a tournament August 9th, raised $100,000+ in Woodburn, Oregon, to donate to local charities, either in Woodburn or in Portland or wherever it may need. And they're doing a lot of work like that. With that being said, in favor of U.S. market space age gas, and with the offices there, would bring in a lot of professionalism as well, right? So in favor.
Thank you. Okay. Any others in favor? Okay. So give me a moment. Thank you all so far. I'm going to apologize, Betty Gonzalez? Betty, are you here? I'll try a little bit later. How about Michelle Harrison? Oh, I
want to add to Michelle Harrison, 124 Oregon Way. And we are right in the middle of this mess. And I'm not saying he's not a good guy. That's not what's going on here. It's disastrous when people are going to come out there and hit our street, because that's where they're going to come, is all up Oregon Way. And it will not be easy for any of us that live there and pay our taxes here. I don't care how good the place is. It's still not going to work. Amen.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you. So if you filled out a green sheet and you didn't check request to speak, I'm going to set you aside. This is just so that you get the information. Pardon me. So Anne Reslick?
And Reslock.
Reslock.
Thank you. Go ahead, girl.
Welcome.
My name is Ann Reslock. I live at 1379 Quinn Road in Woodburn Estates. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I was at your first commission appearance a couple of years ago, and I'm definitely opposed to this for two reasons. Traffic and the fact that this sits on the edge of residential housing on Oregon Way. Yes, and as if we leave through Woodburn Estates and leave out through Oregon Way onto 214. And there are times when the light has to change twice to three times before we can access 214. Now, this doesn't happen all day long, but it does happen. Since 2 years ago, Woodburn has blown up with housing. 214 is accessing now Malala with more apartments over at Safeway, new developments on Boone's Ferry, new developments on the edge of Tukwila. It's just crazy on 214. So I commend the gentleman for putting in trees and grass and making it look better than it is now, because it does look despicable. But there is one big problem at that 214. It's called Dutch Brothers. And you can have the traffic is out into the 214. Yes. So I'm concerned about the gas delivery trucks that come in and then they will exit out on Oregon Way. And if you think that bomb at the bank in 2008 was loud, a 10,000 gallon to 30,000 gallon gas truck is going to be a hell of a lot louder and do a lot more destruction. So I am definitely opposed to this building. I wish that they would build something in soft office space. And, you know, I can go down to Brooks and access US Marketplace and get a cheaper deal. So I'll drive 8 miles to Brooks to get a cheaper deal on my gas. But to have that on 214 and Oregon Way is not practical for the community.
Thank you. Bobby
Yes.
Rainier? I am terrible. I can hardly read these. I do apologize. It is me. So
Well, my real name is Louise Roberta, but my husband nicknamed me Bobby. And he's one of our 26-year veterans that passed away with Agent Orange 21 years ago, because he was the officer over the motor pool in Vietnam. And so this is to help him with what he did. What I used to be.
give us your address, please. I hate to interrupt you, but would you give us your address, please?
Oh, it's 950 Evergreen.
Thank you.
I don't want to smell the fumes, because I used to be a semi driver, and I did a lot of school bus driving, like 36 and a half years for Hood River County. And then for the different ones like in Madras and Doofer and all of those, and Lyle, Washington, and those kids had to meet my bus in the Dalles. And then I had White Salmon and kids from Stevenson come and meet me in White Salmon. Anyway, that's part of what I've done. And they put me in bus driving, school bus driving, because I had kids to go to school. And I've been up in Canada driving semis and all over the United States. Anyway, it is not no difference. You know, it still has old people around here, and they're like me. They have a trouble of breathing when you're getting those fumes. I grew up with the station right next door to me in Mosier, Oregon, when we had Highway 30. And that was not good for me or my parents. And so I'm saying no to a gas station. But if you put Applebee's in there and Windmaster, you know, anyways, they have good salads. And so I watched a truck the other day over on Lancaster, and it had, this is a gas truck delivering gas to a station, and they had, it was 2 trailers. They had to take up over 3 lanes to get into that gas station. And I'm going, they want to put something like that by me? I'm right at the end where I get all of that because I'm right at the end of our condo. And I don't want that on our seniors. And so think twice because I've been there. And I started out with the wagon and horse.
Thank you. Paula? Kilgore? Welcome. Can you give us your name and address, please?
You bet.
Thank you.
Paula Kilgore, 636 Oregon Way. I've lived at this address for 13 years, and I moved into a 55 residential community. And the traffic on my street has increased every year. The speed limit's 25, but the vehicles travel much faster, and it is a residential street. There's a sign up by State Highway 214 in Oregon Way that shows no trucks. And I sit about 3 houses back from Hayes Street. And at least once a week, I watch big semis try to make a right-hand turn onto Hayes. And they take up both lanes to do it because there's really not a lot of room there to be moving those kind of trucks. And I'm worried about the increased traffic because as people exit out of the gas station onto Oregon Way, if they don't go left, they go right, they're going to come right down past where I live, and they're going to have to take a left or a right going on to Hayes. The exit off the facility, the end of the facility off of 214 is a traffic hazard, such as the one at Dutch Brothers and Dairy Queen. Not only do you have a right turn into Dutch Brothers, but you have a right turn out of Dairy Queen. And so now you're looking at that map, shows an entrance into a gas station. Doesn't seem feasible. That map that was up there is not there now. The intersections of Evergreen and 214 and Oregon Way Country Club and 214, I witness at least once to 3 times every week, people are running the red light going on 214. And it doesn't matter whether they're going east or west, but they run it. And if you are sitting at that light waiting to cross over to go to the senior estates facilities, you have to wait a good count to 10 and then double check before you even enter that intersection, and the light will turn yellow before you get across. The signal there is not conducive to the traffic going left or right on either direction, north or south. I have a petition with me tonight signed by residents of the Senior States Golf and Country Club that I'm presenting to you. And we are all in opposition to this gasoline facility at the intersection of 214 and Oregon Way. There's got to be a better use of that land there. And I agree it's an eyesore. But you know what? Our little 55 community could sure use some more condos or apartments for our people that live there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. How about Nancy Ferguson? Welcome. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Nancy Ferguson, Ferguson. I live at 950 Evergreen Road, apartment 323. I have lived there for 8 years. I lived in Woodburn much longer than that. But over the years, I keep seeing 214 becoming more of a hazard. It's become a drag strip, and it's very noisy as it is. I'm concerned just for the sake of gas, as Bobby said, I worry about our fumes and the air quality around us. But I also worry about, now I haven't seen really in any of this stuff any logical changes in the traffic that will allow them to be able to get in and out of there without holding everything up. I live on Evergreen, and if they start coming around Evergreen or down Oregon Way to get out and then come down Evergreen, we are backed up as it is from Weimars, and that is not acceptable. And as far as affordable gasoline, I think those days passed us a long time ago. And this right here is going to create serious problems. I've had neighbors that moved out because the air quality was bad as it was from all the traffic. And so that's my real concern. I stand by my testimony from 2 years ago, whatever we went through this, that I just think it's very poor property. There are other things you could put onto that property that would be much, even if it was just offices, would be much more aesthetically set for every one of us. You stick the wall between Panor and that'll attract 24-hour graffiti and problems, and that'll just bring crime over to our side. We've got enough as it is, and I absolutely refuse. I do not want the gas station. Thank you. Thank you.
Mark Shipman? Mark Shipman? Oh, in favor. I'm sorry, Mark. Dawn and Manette? Dawn or Manette?
Could you put up that picture that's the overview of the lot for me, please? The aerial view. The one, yeah, thank you. Don Zerung, 966 Oregon Way, resident there for now going on 10 years. And my house is the one that I think is directly across from where traffic will be leaving onto Oregon Way, hopefully to take a left turn. So, you know, I don't know how many headlights I'm going to have at night coming through my front windows. But anyway, you know, I, like a lot of the people that spoke in favor, have a lot of respect for Donnie Sadu. He's been an acquaintance of mine for 20 plus years since he moved to this area. And I agree with everything that was said about his integrity, his entrepreneurial, you know, efforts, all up and down, you know, the Oregon, you know, geography. But this is about the traffic issue, which has not been, some of you brought up concerns about it. And I heard the gentleman speaking as a, you know, a traffic authority. But if he sat out there for a long time and took a look at the traffic at that intersection, and then imagine the number of people that will be accessing this facility, it is nothing, you know, nothing but catastrophic potential. And I have witnessed in my 10 years there, I've been out there assisting people a dozen times at that intersection who had, been involved in accidents. Now, as one of the earlier speakers talked about the noise and the speed of traffic on 214 through that stretch, it is like another a speedway. I know we've got one on the other side of I-5, but there are cars now that have straight pipes. They have exhaust systems popping and cracking, and they're traveling at 40, 50, up to 70 miles an hour before they get to the firehouse. And it's not just once in a while, it's daily. So I am really concerned, not about the entrepreneurial enterprise so much. I am concerned about the traffic, the egress, and I think it's nothing more than an accident waiting to happen. And I will close my statement with this. This group approved this 2 years ago, and the city council then overruled this group. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you are a little bit over time, so if you could wrap up, that would be sweet.
I'm wrapping it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Hold on. Let me ask if Marilyn would like to speak.
I'm saying that.
So either way,
To Dawn.
but I did not want to bump Marilyn. Okay, so please come forward. Come forward, give us your name.
That picture back up. Thank you.
Yep, if you wouldn't mind your name and address, please. Thank you so much.
My name's Jan Duncombe, it's Duncum, and I live at 980 Oregon Way.
Thank you.
I am the second house from 214. I am straight across from those vacant lots. It is a nightmare, the way it is. 4 cars backed up at 214. I can't get out of my driveway. You put 3 more cars and you're right at the driveway coming from that lot. Heaven forbid if there's a backup and any of us have an emergency. There's no way you're going to get an ambulance or a fire truck down Oregon Way with all that traffic. There's a bus stop directly across from that driveway. So you've got a city bus stopping there. You've got all these cars backed up and cars behind the city bus. People aren't coming from the gas station, aren't going to want to wait on the bus and all the traffic. They're going to turn right. They're going to go north on Oregon Way. That's a residential area at 25 miles an hour. And like Don said, 214 is a racetrack. They do donuts in that intersection at 4:30 in the morning. It is totally out of control. And Oregon Way is not the place to put all that kind of traffic when it's just a 2-lane coming and going. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Marilyn, would you like to come forward?
My name is Marilyn Spartalotti. Do I have to spell it? No. You got it? You got it? Okay.
I got it.
And I live at 1675 Quinn Road.
in the senior estates. I use that intersection frequently. That's probably one of the most inappropriate corners one could put a gas station on. There's one way in from 214, and you have to be headed eastbound to get into it. If you're heading westbound, you have to turn left onto Oregon Way and then right into the gas station. As everybody, prior people have said, it's going to be a traffic nightmare. We're already seeing more traffic coming in through the residential area from the development on Boone's, that's going to come with the development on Boone's Ferry. They're going to not want to drive to 214, and they're cutting in through the residential streets, more and more people. As traffic gets heavier on 214, the traffic in the side streets in the residential neighborhoods get worse. The lot is an eyesore. I've seen, encampments had to be taken out of there. So is this lot across the street is an eyesore next to Kentucky Fried Chicken. It has been vacant for as long as I've lived there, well over, I think, since they did the alignment. They realigned Evergreen, Oregon Way, and took out a gas station right across the street. My understanding is the development for that lot has been delayed for years because of pollution caused by the gas station that had been there prior. So what do we want to do? We want to plan another gas station across the street with limited vehicle access. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, that location isn't fit for that amount of traffic going in and out. It needs to be developed, but I would suggest a more low-key business that isn't going to bring that amount of traffic into that intersection and add to the already existing problems that we're facing. And I think that's all I had to say. Thank you.
On the same sheet with Vivian. Vivian, did you want to come up and speak? Okay, I just wanted to verify that. Thank you. And it looks like Becky Hayes. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me talk. Becky Hayes, Rebecca, at 950 Evergreen Road, Woodburn. I'm in agreement that I think Woodburn should put their money with local investors. However, and that property is an eyesore, I agree. We're missing a few facts. Woodburn is going backwards. We're not looking at the green canopy. We're putting more industrial noise pollution and air pollution by putting in a gas station there. Maybe something lower key, if they could possibly split put offices and a convenience store, might be a little bit more easier to swallow. You won't have such large trucks. My grandfather owned a gas station for 40 years, and I know what kind of pollution they are. Yes, we've come a long way in the last since he owned his station to clean up the air. But the trees, they offer money to plant trees somewhere else, not where we need them, right off the freeway. We need green air space. We need some kind of way to live with this world. We've got climate change. We're dealing with that all the time. That is one of my biggest issues. Everybody's addressed traffic, and I agree, traffic is a very bad area to do that. I listen to the racers up and down, you know, they put holes in their exhaust pipes and put on these special pipes and then rev the engines all the way down, all through the night. Evergreen Road and 214. The traffic flow is definitely an issue. If you look down, one other thing I want to mention before I go into that, expansion. There is an issue if you go all the way down 214 to 99. Settlemyre is backed up a mile 2 times a day, both ways. How are you going to, you can't expand on 214 anymore, especially if you put another gas station there. So you've got quite a few issues. I think Woodburn needs the income. I believe in local people that live here making money and making money for the city. But I think there's a better way to do it.
Okay, I am out of green sheets and I apologize for butchering everybody's name. I apologize up front. I do see a gentleman in the back that would like to speak. Yes. Please come forward, give us your name and address.
Do I need to push any buttons? Name's Bob Moore, and I live at 943 Oregon Way, which is one of the houses that backs up to that lot.
Okay.
So I hear a lot of the noises that the ladies have been saying, which I agree with them with this racing and stuff, which causes a problem and happens at all times of the night, not during the day. So that is going to be a major problem. I have a question regarding the store. Is that a 24-hour store? And is the office buildings going to be available 24 hours to their staff? Well, these are all concerns because of the lights in the buildings, the traffic from the store people. Who knows what kind of people are going to be going in and out of there? If they see we live in a senior community, they may take advantages of our seniors, which is not a good thing. Okay, the gas prices, unless you're going to Costco prices, any freeway that I've ever driven on that has a gas station next to the freeway has never been affordable. You had no choice but to spend whatever they charged you. So I would imagine the gas station is not going to be cheap, even though it'll be another station, but then it doesn't do anything for us financially. The other question I have is at the light. Can't you make that a non-U-turn and only a left turn into the community for the seniors that all live in there? Is that not an option? Because I've seen lots of intersections that have only a left turn, but no U-turn. If you put a no U-turn there and you change the out where they're not coming out to Oregon Way and they're going back out on 214, then they got to go down the road a bit to get back around, which is a lot better than coming out and causing traffic for every one of us that you can see the houses. Not to mention everybody else down the other end of the street. So this is another problem. There are solutions that can be done, but who does it and will they do it is the question. Thank you.
Are there any other people that would like to speak in opposition that have not already spoken?
I did fill out a green sheet. I don't know where it is.
Oh. Please come forward, give us your name and your address, please. Thank you.
Name is Anna Phillips, 2329 Oregon Court, which is off of Oregon Way. I'm impacted even on Oregon Court by the increase in traffic since I have moved there. I've been there 15 years now. And Oregon Way makes a slight turn as it gets down closer to Hayes. When I'm on Oregon Court, I have to be extremely careful when I'm pulling out left or right because traffic will come around that curve. And if they don't live in the estates, they do not go 25 miles an hour. They go 40 or 50. And I've nearly gotten hit twice by cars coming around that corner just as I'm pulling out. And I hate to think what it's going to be like. It's bad. It's as bad as everybody's described. But the one thing I haven't heard anybody address is how's this going to affect property values? I have not heard one word about that. And I look at all those homes right there. 2 of them immediately went up for sale, right? The 2 that are impacted the most were for sale for a while. I don't know if they still are. Okay. Okay. That's going to impact everybody that lives on Oregon Way is going to be impacted by this. You know that it's not just going to affect us traffic wise. It's going to affect everybody in that area. The traffic has gotten heavier and heavier and heavier. And if you're in the market for a home, you don't want to be on a heavily trafficked road. People use Oregon Way all the time for everything. That's a good way to zip over to Walmart. You go down Oregon Way, turn right on Hayes, and boom, you're there. So you might want to consider that because most of us that live in the estates are on fixed incomes, you know, and when we're gone or when we want to sell or want to buy, it's going to have a huge impact. And I'd like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask again, is there anyone left? I see a hand in the back. You already spoke. Is there anyone else? Actually, just a moment. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in opposition that has not already spoken? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mick Harris. I'm an attorney at Tonkin Torp LLP. Our address is 888 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1600 in Portland, 97204. We represent Woodburn Fast Serve and LB Group, both of which own real property in the city of Woodburn. I would just like to briefly discuss some of the comments that were included in the letter submitted by my colleague David Peterson yesterday for the Commission's consideration, and also in doing so respond to some of the comments made by the applicant's attorney. While the applicant's attorney perhaps took umbrage with our characterization of this application as being exactly the same as the one before that was handily rejected but worse, I would argue that the changes to which the applicant's attorney pointed were largely what I would consider to be essentially window dressing. These are design, landscaping, aesthetics, and while those may make some sort of marginal improvement, I think it's obvious that when listening to the voices of the community here in the room tonight, that the big concerns have remained unaddressed and in fact have been only made worse by this bottleneck onto Oregon Way. And if we look back to the entire setup of this hearing and this type of conditional use consideration being due to the fact that this proposed site is within 200 feet of a residential property, it's easy to see how the City Council came to its conclusion 2 years ago as to the incompatibility of this particular proposal with respect to the pollution, the odors, the noise, things that really drive to the heart of livability and which are not simply amended or improved by some mild landscape improvements. So I think that's critically important to recognize that this will actually only make a worse impact than what was already considered and rejected. I also want to speak very briefly about the traffic issue, which I know we all are probably sick of hearing about, but I think it's important also to speak to something that hasn't come up yet at least not that I've heard, which is that ODOT is requiring a cross easement across the lot to where the Dairy Queen and the Dutch Bros is. And while they're not intending to at this time make that accessible, if at some point that changes due to ODOT's desire to restrict and ensure that there's appropriate use of the driveway in off the highway, then that would also funnel the Dutch Bros and Dairy Queen traffic onto Oregon Way. So, I mean, that has to be considered as part of what is being proposed. Lastly, I would just point to what the applicant's attorney considered to be somewhat of a red herring. And we do feel that the procedural issues that are identified with respect to the applicants, what we believe are legally, or the staff reports, excuse me, legally inadequate findings and deference to a non-public forum to be a significant issue, as it is paramount to the land use process that these decisions are made as the statutes and ordinances require. And finally, with regards to the requested street adjustments, we do not believe that the applicant has met their burden. It is supposed to only be if there are unusual situations where discretionary flexibility is required. And if the applicant's main concern is price and cost, I would argue that that's a very usual concern. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
So at this time, I see we have another person that, excuse me. I have a gentleman that would like to speak. So let's give him the floor. Please give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Danny Draper. I'm at 993 Lawson Avenue, Woodburn. I'm giving you a little bit different perspective. I've been in the gas industry for 31 years. I've managed Arco, Shell, 76, Chevron, and Independent. I've helped in designing multiple gas stations over my 31 years. I'm here to speak to you about the vehicle circulation on the site. And I know you have the drawing that shows the mock-up of that. I want to point you to the first position, which is one of the most favored positions a car is going to want to come off the 214. And it speaks to where we are now a full serve and self-serve state. Well, 85% of our customers still choose full serve. So when you come off the 214, and my wife and I have a motorhome and we pull our Jeep behind it, we're going to take the easiest, like most people will, spot. Their full serve is the closest to the 214. That can block traffic because that Jeep that's behind there, or think of a F-350 pulling a drag car down to the races, or think of a landscaper pulling their trailer behind them, or how about a U-Haul with a tow car behind it? All of those situations are going to create a choke point right there at the 214. And if a delivery truck comes in after that, Frito-Lay, McLean, anything they come in after that, they're not going to be able to back up. They're going to just be parked partially on the 214. I know this plan is showing circulation, but it can block up very quickly. I know, I've been there. We run gas stations all the time, and I know what happens. The second point I would like to make has to do with the circulation when the gas truck comes. When it comes, it's going to come off the 214. It's going to come onto the site, and there's a loading area they show on the plan. There has to be a safety zone for that truck to be able, it has to be away from the fills. It can be within 5 feet or so, but you add another 8 feet or so for the width of the truck. Now you're at least 12, and those fills are not right at their curb. So you're about 16 feet or so into the property. Even if it doesn't block that last set of islands to allow cars to sneak by there, potentially you can block it moving towards the Oregon Way. What happened then at that point is, let's say another truck comes in, a Frito-Lay, a Hostess, we have dozens of trucks that come in. And they don't all come in whenever, they come in all the time. You can have 2 or 3 deliveries at any given time. If a gas truck is sitting there and a Frito-Lay comes in off of Oregon Way, they can block and they could landlock your site where you can't get out. So all of the people on that site could be landlocked. And that's not even to mention, what if other truck like a Pepsi or Coke come up behind there? They can lock that whole island. If there's an emergency, you can't get out.
Are you?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, has everyone had an opportunity to speak? I see a person in the back. Please come forward, give us your name and your address. Thank you so much and welcome.
My name is Susan Huggins, and I live at 910 Oregon Way. I'm about 6 houses in of where that's going to turn. And as they've said before, the traffic is going to be out of sight. But the other thing that I'm concerned about is this convenience store and the clientele that will come to it and stay until midnight or after. And that is a big concern living alone. And a lot of my neighbors also are alone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I see a hand. Please come forward and give us your name and your address.
I already spoke.
Okay.
I just have a question on page 26. It talks to a transportation and traffic report that is supposed to have been done by the applicant. Has this been done by the applicant?
So at this point, we are not answering your questions.
Okay.
We are taking testimony from you. All of the materials are available on our website. I think if you had questions, maybe Chris could explain to you how to get to them. But of the questions that I have heard, all of those materials are on our website. It's completely transparent. You are all welcome to go there and go through them. If at the next phase, any of our commissioners want to ask those questions of staff or the applicant, they will. But the way this works, we're here to listen to you. We're not answering your questions. We're taking your feedback, your input.
One last question. Those of us that have filled out the green paper,
yes,
will we get further notice as to what's happening with this?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why we filled it out.
All right, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else that wants to speak? I see a hand in the back. Did you?
I just have one question. Did we still post a letter on the website in opposition?
So, at this point, right now, at this very moment, we are taking testimony. So testimony is still open. It's under normal circumstances, we would finish our hearing and close it unless something happens that would have us leave the record open. So that is, it's possible the record will be open. I can't tell you right now what's going to happen. But right now we are taking testimony.
Can I take?
I will give you a minute and I will literally watch the clock. So I apologize for being a little snarky, but please come forward.
Okay, there were a few things as I'm getting, my memory's not that great.
Nope.
But
And
I do write things down.
I was gonna, just for the benefit of everybody here, I really want to hear from you. I'm trying very hard to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity to speak and be heard, and that we can be heard. So normally, once you've spoken, that's good. But I understand that this is very important to everyone in this room, regardless of which way that you fall on the spectrum. So I'm going to give you a little bit of grace and let you finish.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Again, Becky Hayes, and I'm in the Panor units, and I purchased my unit 5 years ago. So, the lady that mentioned property prices going down, the value, it is going to impact us for sure. But also, I get my gas at Costco or I get it at one of the truck stops, which is more cheaper than here. That was the second. I appreciate your minute. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So has everyone in this room had a chance to speak that wants to speak? Do I see a hand in the back? I do.
I just have a comment.
Okay. Your name and address again?
Jan Duncombe, 980 Oregon Way. The comment I was going to say, we were talking about the traffic on Oregon Way. Not only do we have the city bus, but you have to remember this is a 55 plus. It's a golf course. We have senior citizens drive their golf carts down Oregon Way. The golf maintenance people drive their big tractors down Oregon Way. So it's not just cars that travel that street.
Thank you. Okay. I think we have heard from every person in this room. And that's fine. I will tell you that we appreciate hearing all of your comments, and that we are listening. And if you notice that we all take notes, at some point when we deliberate a lot of these notes, we will ask questions based on the comments that you have made. So I want you to know that we appreciate hearing from you. And I sincerely mean that. Okay. At this point, I'm going to invite the applicant to come back up for rebuttal. I believe that's the next appropriate part of this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity for rebuttal. At this time, the applicant would like to request that the Planning Commission keep the record open, close the hearing, and provide the applicant 32 days to be able to respond to the letter from Tonkin Torp, as well as the testimony that was given tonight in opposition. I've picked 32 days because that would mean that the open record period, which would allow anybody to submit any comments or more letters in opposition, that would end on Monday, September 23rd. Then I would request that the applicant, we'd have a 14-day period within which that anybody would have, both the applicants and the opponents would have an opportunity to rebut that evidence that came in. And then the applicant would have an additional 14-day period, which would end on October 21st. My reason for this extension is because just the nature of the application. There's just a lot of information that was given. Again, we just were given the Tonkin Torp letter this morning. Not enough time to really dig into it at all. Our traffic consultant's going to have additional work that we need to do. Normally in a typical land use setting, you could ask your staff. We typically would do 7, 7, and 7. And that would be if we didn't have, any opposition, but we do in this case. In addition, we will orally grant an extension to the 120-day time limit this evening by granting additional 60 days for the city to review this application. And I will follow that up next week in a formal letter confirming the same. So I respectfully request that you close the hearing and then allow us the additional time that both for the applicant and also for the opponents to be able to submit additional testimony and evidence into the record. Happy to address any questions of the commission at this time.
Does the commission have any questions, or do we understand what's before us?
I had a question about the timing of some of the bigger vehicles coming into your location. Do we have a schedule or anything like that as far as some of the bigger vehicles coming in?
No schedule, but from my understanding with respect to the gas trucks, the fueling trucks that are coming in, those are going to come in very early morning, late in the evening, or on the weekends, early morning, late in the evening. They're not going to be coming in at peak times. So that's not something that we've offered up any other way. I think that the applicant could develop a schedule. I think that they should be able to to do that, that would be able to meet those concerns.
I had the same question. How many and what type of large,
So
I mean,
let me kind of interrupt real quick. Before we get into any really asking questions and deliberation, what the applicant has said is they would like an opportunity for us to actually not deliberate tonight and close the hearing for oral testimony and allow additional time for written testimony, both in favor and in opposition. And then after we've had a chance to collect all of the additional testimony, and after we close it, and then they have another 14 days to go through all of the additional testimony, everything that was given tonight, everything that comes in. They will then come back and do the rebuttal part, at which point we would then be able to start asking questions and deliberate. So I think what's before us now is, do we want to plow through and say, no, we're going to make a decision tonight? Or do we want to actually go ahead and close the hearing, allow another, 32 days for us to accept testimony? That will give us an opportunity to read through everything that we got tonight, what we heard tonight, what came through Tonkintorp, and it would allow everyone in the audience and within the community to give us more testimony.
I think that's a great idea. We've got a lot of new information tonight.
We got a lot of new information tonight,
and good to have time to look it over more.
Yes, and so they've asked for 30 days to 32 days to get more information. We don't have to say yes. We could do what we want, but 32 days to get more information, more testimony. Then they would have they're asking for an additional 14 days to go through everything that comes in, then come back. Then they would give us their rebuttal. We would ask questions. We would deliberate.
Just a clarification, Madam Chair.
Please.
So what would happen actually is that you would have the 14-day period for review, and then the applicant would have 7 days to submit a written final argument once the record is closed. So they would not be coming back for oral rebuttal, as that would be part of the public hearing itself. Okay. So.
But then we would come back after everything's been submitted.
Correct. Yes.
Then we would be able to deliberate.
Can I apologize for the Oregon land use system being very complicated. And that's what a lot of these pieces are. And yeah, please correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm going to try to simplify it a bit. What it means is that the public hearing portion would be closed on it, but everybody, even applicants, would be able to provide any kind of written testimony they like.
Written testimony.
For the next 32 days. All right, which essentially would close on September 23rd. My recommendation was that, of course, those will all come to staff. We'll post that information and make it available for anyone to look at. There's an extra 14-day, the request is to allow an extra 14 days for, again, everyone to view that.
Yes.
And essentially, everyone gets a chance to review what's been submitted. Maybe there's tweaks to some findings. Maybe there's some more information that's submitted from opponents to the application, and they can provide more argument. And this is kind of an important point. They wouldn't be submitting any new evidence into the record. They'd be discussing what came into the record during that 30-day period and say, this is why I agree or disagree, or why I think it's relevant or not relevant. Just to add an extra wrinkle, Oregon land use law allows an applicant, or requires the applicant, to have the last opportunity for a rebuttal. And they're requesting an additional 14-day, again, for a written rebuttal. They wouldn't provide any new evidence. It would just be a rebuttal to what's been entered into the record.
Yes.
And then the dates that we talked about are in here. I think the most important day for the public to understand is, if the commission was on board with this request, that there'd be another 30 days until September 23rd for folks to submit any written evidence or any written testimony that they like to staff. My card's up back there. It's the same place they submitted them before. they can get them to us, and then we'll post them online. And if they call me or call them, we can make it easy for people to access it and let them know what these extra dates are if they get lost. All that being said, can I make a small recommendation?
Well, and the one thing that I want to make sure that we get on the record is the part that says they are willing to. It's the 180-day rule I want to, or 120-day.
Oh, the last
The
paragraph.
applicant has orally agreed to grant an extension of the 120-day time limit tonight by granting an additional 60 days to the city to review the application, and we'll get that to us in writing. So I want to make sure that we get it in writing that they have agreed to, in essence, stop the clock so that we can allow this to happen. So, and now you may give the wrinkle.
And it's just kind of this is a recommendation. And this is a request from the applicant to you.
Yeah.
There are some requirements that everyone's entitled to a 7-day. This would be much longer period. Generally speaking, staff's very much in favor of keeping that door open a little bit longer for some testimony. We've heard a lot of testimony. A lot of people may have heard things they didn't know before, opponents and the applicant as well. And I think it's a good opportunity to respond to it, and bringing those in a written format seems like a really good idea, and having a longer window. Staff's in favor of that. If I had one recommendation just for the planning commission, we like these dates in general. I think it might be worth having the applicant's final rebuttal period be just 7 days instead of 14. And the reason I say that is because that would allow us to conceivably be able to hold our planning commission meeting on this for your deliberation and vote on October 14th. Oh, I'm sorry, October 24th. Just read it incorrectly. It just saves us it saves us 3 weeks of time. Otherwise, we'd be bumped into November 14th. That's slightly different than the letter in front of you. The letter, the third bullet, asks for a 14-day period, and it's the planning commission's determination to make. But if that were limited to just 7 for their final rebuttal, their final written rebuttal that they provide, that would allow us to keep that meeting on October 24th, which is preferable to staff. That's just a staff recommendation. Otherwise,
So the final rebuttal ends on the 14th, but the meeting would be on the 24th.
that is correct.
Okay, I see. I was trying to figure out.
You said it better than me as usual.
Yeah.
Anybody ready and generally agree?
I've got a question just because so it's a written rebuttal, and I know in other cases we've had a chance to ask questions as we're trying to deliberate, and that would not be the case then?
You would have the opportunity to ask questions to staff, but the record would be closed at that point.
You can ask questions right now of the applicant if you like during this period. And if I know this sounds odd, but I think that we've all heard a lot of different things here tonight, whether it's the commission, the applicant, et cetera, that might inform some of the other pieces that come in about how some findings might get modified or some conditions. Best we can do is make them available. And I know this sounds odd. The commission always has the opportunity to come back and say, you know what, I've decided to reopen this record again, provided they make it under the clock. Every commission has that opportunity. Yeah. If for some reason you felt it was necessary, that would mean opening it up to everybody, possibly renoticing, opening up for rebuttal in this potentially the same period. Not recommending it, but I'm just throwing that out there.
So I can ask, the very next time we're going to talk about this is going to be on October 24th. Or are we having another meeting in between?
We will have meetings in between, and you will be able to review information that's come in, just like the applicant and the public will review that information. But there wouldn't be a Q&A.
There wouldn't be a
before that
deliberation or discussion.
Right. Those would be saved and held back
until after everything is. I like your suggestion that we do say 7 days so that we aren't losing another almost month before we do the deliberations. Because, once we get to November and December, things start moving quickly and strangely.
Things I hadn't thought about, like the trucks to the convenience store.
I mean, they could be coming all day long. And I never even thought about it. So we were talking about the fuel trucks. There's more stuff to think about.
There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of materials that have come in. We've heard a lot of testimony. I know
Yes.
that.
Sorry,
Commissioner Bartel?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree that granting more time is a good idea. This is a pretty important thing on both sides. And I wouldn't mind having a little bit more information and some information clarification before we enter into deliberation. And it sounds like we've got a couple of options depending on what comes in, with the ability to ask questions of staff and or even open the hearing. So I think that sounds, there's just been a lot discussed tonight, and there were a lot of documents submitted. And I think this taking a little bit more time is a good idea.
Yep. So do we need a motion to close the hearing? Do we?
I would first confirm with the applicant, Madam Chair, that that timeframe is agreeable to them, and then you're statutorily required to give the 7 days of open hearing. So technically, you couldn't open it up to a motion because it could be it could fail. So you need to, as the chair, determine whether that timeframe is agreeable to you, and then if it is, and state it on the record.
And if I understand the applicant had asked for 14 days, and I understand the timing issues. Does it have to be 7 or 14? Can it be 10? Can it be 12? Can you help me look at a calendar and make that determination to, one, give the applicant enough time? This is negotiations to a degree, right? I want to make sure that we don't derail it on that, but that we give you enough time and we still meet our planning commission dates.
You're definitely meeting the statutory state guidelines. Those
With
are just
7.
7 days and
Yeah.
7 days. So everything that's being proposed is at a minimum 7 days or longer. The applicant is proposing 30 days of having the record open, and then 14 days for responses after the record is closed. And then there'll be a 7-day period for the applicant to do their final argument, and that'll be written argument.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Again, they're here, and this is a good time. They're still doing their rebuttals, just so that we're understanding where we're at.
And you've asked for 32 days, just to be clear.
Yes, sorry.
Because 30 days puts us on a Sunday, and so that's why I kick it over 32 to Monday. So here's what I would propose as a alternative. So we requested 14. Your council's requested that you go with 7 in order to meet your meeting on the 24th. What if we do 10 and we go to October 17th?
That's what I was asking. Would 10, I believe 10 would give us enough time. Would 10 give you enough time?
A little bit more time, yeah.
And we're all shooting for the idea of getting a staff report out 7 days in front. So if it came in at noon on the 17th, I don't want to get information and have to prepare documents, get them posted online, everything else, because there's going to be.
I don't want to tie anybody's hands, but I do want to give enough time.
So I think 12 o'clock on the 17th.
12 o'clock on the 17th, okay.
Which is essentially 10 days.
Okay.
14
I
for
think
the last.
that.
And that's, everything else is the same on the memorandum that's bulleted on here, except for that third bullet. It would be that 10 days at noon on the 17th.
Noon on the 17th. Okay. Now the question is, do we need a motion? Do I just close it? But this is a little outside of the normal scope.
I would first just check with the applicant and make sure that they're finished with their rebuttal, or if they have anything else to add.
We are.
And then at that point, Madam Chair, you just need to state on the record what that time frame is going to be before you, and state that you are closing the record, but leaving, or closing the public hearing, but leaving the record open for written testimony.
Okay. You are finished with your rebuttal. Okay. And so at this time, I am going to close the public hearing I'm going to leave the record open for written testimony for an additional 32 days until 5 p.m. on Monday, September 23rd of 2024. And then
That second
any
bullet.
addition, right, I'm trying to read that. Any additional interested parties, whether in support or opposition, have a 14-day rebuttal period until 5 p.m. on Monday, October 7th, 2024. And the applicant's final rebuttal period shall continue for a period of 10 days and shall end at noon on October 17th. And the applicant has agreed to extend the 120-day time limit this evening by granting an additional 60 days to the city to review the application, and will verify the extension in a formal letter to the city next week. So shall it be.
Could you just state for the record that you're closing the hearing?
I am closing
The public hearing.
public hearing.
Can I add one, and I hate to say this, I'm sorry, and it might be of interest to the public. Just to ensure that we don't have to do an additional notification out to people for a vote of deliberation hearing. You could state that, I think, we expect to come back on
October 24th.
October 24th for deliberation.
We
and
expect
a
to come
final
back on
decision.
October 24th for deliberation on this matter. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll post all this online as well.
So
to the
for
project.
all of the people, excuse me, for everyone in the room. Hello? No, I don't want to bang it. Okay, folks. For everyone in the room, I know a lot of you had questions. You are welcome to submit the questions to the city. You are also welcome to go onto the city website and review the materials. I know there were questions about the traffic plan. There were questions about other aspects of the plan that are there. And you are welcome to go through and review all of those materials. They are easily found on the website. Wherever it is where you sent the emails to, you can ask questions. Please do that. And I want to thank you all for coming in and giving us your support, or giving us your position on this. Either way, we do take it seriously, and we really want to hear from you. So thank you all for taking the time tonight to come out and speak with us and coming before us and speaking. I know it's not always easy to do that, and we do really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Especially the ones that can't use computers.
We have several people at the city that would be willing to sit and talk with you and help you out. And so we are not done yet. So, oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you. It probably is. There were a lot tonight. Okay, testimony, applicant. Yes.
I think that should be.
Okay.
There you go.
Do we have any business from the commission? Hello, let's get back on track, folks.
None from me.
Okay. Any updates from staff?
I don't have anything else to add. Thank
Okay.
you.
In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.